Welcome to our deep dive, into the emotional side of divorce. We're going beyond just the legal stuff. Really going to explore the human side of things. Feelings, relationships, and building a healthy future for you and your children. It's a lot. We're here to help break it all down using excerpts from Mental Wellness TV's document called Divorce, Emotional Recovery Strategies for Parents and Children, copyright 2025.
And divorce, as a roller coaster. It is
Yes.
for everyone involved. But remember, you and your children will experience a lot of intense emotions.
Yeah.
And that's normal.
Yeah.
This deep dive is designed to help you validate those feelings and really gain some practical tools to navigate them.
Okay, so the source, kicks off by talking about this whole emotional roller coaster thing, and they're not really sugarcoating anything. Divorce, tough for
Yeah.
everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they make a really good point. It's not just about those big explosive moments. It's the subtle shifts, the anxieties that might not even be directly expressed. For example, younger children might start blaming themselves or feeling helpless.
That's heartbreaking. The document also mentions that teenagers might react differently, maybe with anger or withdrawal. It's like they're struggling, but they might not even connect those behaviors to the divorce itself.
Exactly.
So how do we help kids through all of this?
Well, the source really emphasizes the importance of stability and security, especially for children. It's about reassuring them that even though the family structure is changing, their parents' love and support isn't.
Which brings us to, I think, the next big point, communication. I'm guessing this is something a lot of people struggle with during a divorce.
Absolutely. The source dives deep into communication on multiple levels. Let's start with parent-to-parent communication, putting the kids' needs first, keeping things civil even when it's hard. The document strongly suggests that you focus on kid-related topics rather than rehashing old arguments.
Makes sense.
It's about finding that balance between protecting your children from adult details while still answering their questions honestly.
Okay, so that makes sense in theory. But how do you manage that in practice? It seems like such a tightrope walk.
It is. And I actually pushed back a bit on this section when I was reading through it. The source suggests written communication or parenting apps, especially when things are tense. I could see how that would be helpful in some situations, removing that like heat of the moment element,
Hmm.
you know, allowing for more thoughtful responses.
Hmm.
But wouldn't that feel impersonal sometimes? Especially for families that are used to communicating more openly.
That's a good point. Not everything can be resolved through text message.
Right. So I think it comes down to finding what works best for your family dynamic. Maybe written communication is helpful for logistics and scheduling, but you still prioritize face-to-face conversations for the more emotionally charged topics. It's about being flexible,
Hmm.
adapting your approach.
The source has a ton of tips for supporting your children through this process. They're all fantastic, but if I had to boil it down to like the top three,
Let's hear them.
okay. The first one that really struck me was about boosting self-esteem. The source suggests praising kids for their efforts, not just for the results. It's a subtle shift. But I can see how it could make a big difference in a child's sense of self-worth, especially when so much else feels unstable.
Absolutely. It's about acknowledging their resilience,
Hmm.
helping them build that inner strength.
Mm.
So what's number two?
Number two is all about consistency and stability. Routines are key, even across two households.
Makes sense. The familiar can be so grounding, especially for kids.
And number three,
The third tip focuses on managing change. Divorce impacts everything. Home life, school life, even friendships.
it's a lot for a kid to handle on top of everything else.
It is. The source suggests helping them navigate these transitions. At home, at school,
Mhm.
being that steady presence they can rely on.
It's like you're their anchor. And this is where I want to highlight something the source mentions that I think is really important. Therapy.
Yes, it's not for everyone, but it can be incredibly helpful, especially for kids that are really struggling to cope with all the changes. Sometimes having a neutral, supportive adult to talk to outside the family can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. And that leads perfectly to the source's emphasis on self-care for the parents, which is a point I think that often gets overlooked. But it's crucial. You can't pour from an empty cup.
So true. And they make it really clear. It's not about grand gestures. Small things like taking 15 minutes to go for a walk or just sit in silence can really help recharge your emotional batteries. It's about being intentional with those little moments of self-care.
Right. Which allows you to be a better parent, ultimately. The source also suggests that you consider support groups or therapy for yourself. It's a good reminder that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
And when we talk about relationships after divorce, things can get complicated, especially when co-parenting is involved.
The source dives into this. emphasizing that cooperation is key, even when it's hard. You know it's about putting the kids' needs first and finding a way to work together, even if you don't always see eye to eye with your ex.
It sounds great in theory, but the reality can be much messier. I've heard from so many parents who really struggle with this.
Right. It's not always easy to put aside those personal feelings. So what does this source recommend for making this whole co-parenting thing actually work?
Well, they have this interesting suggestion about creating a formal parenting plan.
Okay. Now I can see how some people might resist that. It seems so formal, almost cold.
Yeah.
But they make a really good point. Having clear guidelines can actually help reduce conflict.
It takes the guesswork out,
Mhm.
provides a framework for making decisions together.
But I guess the key is flexibility, right? A parenting plan shouldn't be set in stone. It needs to adapt as the kids grow and circumstances change.
Exactly. And that brings up an important question for you. What does flexibility look like for you in this new co-parenting relationship?
That's something to really think about. And speaking of adapting to a new normal after divorce, the source really encourages parents to, develop some positive habits.
Yes. This isn't just about coping. It's about thriving. And they offer several suggestions. Exercise, good food, maintaining those routines that we talked about earlier, building a foundation for a healthy future for yourself and your kids.
And I love that the source emphasizes the power of positive thinking. It's not about ignoring the bad, but choosing to focus on the future and the potential for growth.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift. That can make all the difference.
It really can. And that ties into the next point beautifully. The source talks about the importance of reconnecting with your kids after divorce.
Because it's not just about being physically present. It's about being truly present, engaged, attentive.
Quality, time over quantity. Got it. But what does that look like in practice? What are some tangible ways to reconnect?
Well, the source talks about creating safe spaces for kids to express their feelings without judgment, being that listening ear, that shoulder to cry on, without offering unsolicited advice or trying to fix their problems, just letting them know that you're there for them no matter what.
That's powerful. The source also suggests shared experiences, trips, hobbies, anything that brings you and your child together in a positive way.
Because sometimes the best conversations happen when you're side by side.
Yeah.
Doing something you both enjoy.
Okay, so we've talked about supporting your kids, taking care of yourself. But the source also reminds us that we don't have to go through this alone. They're big advocates for leaning on your support system, whether that's friends, family, a professional therapist.
It's about recognizing that you have limits, reaching out when you need help. And the source has this great quote, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but an act of self-awareness and self-care.
It's about being kind to yourself, recognizing that you're not superhuman. You're allowed to struggle, and you're allowed to ask for support.
Now let's talk about teens and divorce. The source acknowledges that navigating this can be especially challenging.
Because teenagers are already going through so much developmentally, figuring out who they are and where they fit in the world. And then you add divorce on top of that. It's a lot to process.
The source talks about how teens might act out, withdraw, or challenge everything. It's their way of coping with all the change and upheaval.
And the source stresses that open communication is still crucial, even when it feels like they're pushing you away.
It's about letting them know that you're there for them, even if they don't want to talk right now.
Yeah.
And the source suggests involving them in decisions, when appropriate.
I love that. Gives them a sense of agency and control during a time when much feels out of their control.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to be active participants in their own lives, even as their family structure is changing.
And the source keeps coming back to this idea of empathy. It's like a thread that runs throughout the entire document.
Because empathy is truly the key to navigating divorce with grace and compassion. The source applies this to two key areas: understanding your ex and understanding your kids.
Okay. Let's break those down. What does empathy look like in terms of understanding your ex?
It's not about condoning bad behavior,
Yeah.
but recognizing that they're also going through a tough time. They're also hurting. They're also adjusting.
So it's about trying to see the perspective even when it's hard.
Exactly.
And with your kids, empathy means tuning into their emotions, trying to see the world from their point of view.
Recognizing that their experience is different from yours. And that's okay.
Right.
And the source offers a great technique for fostering empathy in communication, using I statements. For example, instead of saying, "You always make me feel me," try saying, "I feel hurt when."
It's about owning your feelings without placing blame.
Exactly. It helps everyone focus on feelings and needs, rather than getting caught up in accusations.
Okay. Now let's talk about new relationships after divorce. This is a topic that can be fraught with emotion.
The source approaches this with a lot of caution. They emphasize that emotional healing needs to come first.
Don't rush into anything just to avoid being alone. Take the time to process what happened, learn from the past, and really understand what you want in a future relationship.
Right. It's about being honest with yourself and with potential partners about your expectations and needs. And speaking of honesty, the source really emphasizes the power of positive perception. They talk about how a positive outlook can actually aid in emotional recovery.
Because it's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good and the potential for growth, even when things are tough.
It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective.
And they offer some great strategies for cultivating this positive mindset.
Yeah.
Celebrating small wins, practicing gratitude,
Yeah.
and managing stress through healthy coping mechanisms. These are all tools for building a more positive outlook.
And even with all that, the source doesn't shy away from the fact that stress is an inevitable part of the divorce process. Absolutely. But their message isn't one of despair. It's about recognizing that stress, while unavoidable, can be managed.
So what are some of the source's tips for keeping that stress monster at bay?
Well, they talk about the importance of not bottling up your emotions. Find healthy outlets for expressing your feelings, whether it's through journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking professional help.
It's like that old saying, let it out or it will eat you up inside.
Exactly. And they also mention the importance of deep breathing and relaxation techniques. These might seem simple, but they can be incredibly effective in calming the nervous system and reducing anxiety.
Sometimes it's about finding those little moments of peace amidst the storm.
And speaking of storms, the source makes a point that I think is essential. Divorce is a process, and it's going to have its rough patches. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when you feel like you're taking 2 steps back for every 1 step forward.
Yes, it's not a linear journey. It's more like a messy, unpredictable dance.
Exactly. And the source is big on building mental resilience, that ability to bounce back from those setbacks, to learn from them, and to keep moving forward. And the good news is, resilience is a skill you can develop.
Okay, that's encouraging. So tell me more about this whole mental resilience thing. What does it look like in practice?
Well, the source offers several strategies for boosting resilience, and they all tie back to self-care, which we talked about earlier. It's about prioritizing your mental and emotional well-being so you have the strength to navigate the ups and downs of the divorce process.
So things like exercise, getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, those all contribute to building mental resilience.
Absolutely. It's about taking care of your physical body so your mind can be at its best. And the source also talks about the importance of nurturing your social connections, surrounding yourself with supportive people who uplift you and offer encouragement.
Right, because isolating yourself just makes everything feel worse.
Exactly. And lastly, the source emphasizes the importance of finding healthy coping mechanisms for stress. This might look different for everyone, but it could be anything from meditation to spending time in nature to pursuing creative hobbies. It's about finding what works for you and making it a regular part of your routine.
It sounds like building mental resilience is a journey, not a destination.
You got it. And speaking of journeys, the source really emphasizes the importance of celebrating victories, no matter how small.
Yes, it's such an important reminder that amidst all the challenges, there is virtually room for joy and celebration.
And the source encourages families to actively seek out those moments of celebration.
So what does that look like in practice? Give us some examples from the source.
Well, they talk about the importance of acknowledging
Mm-hmm.
even the smallest wins, like a child getting a good grade on a test, or a parent successfully navigating a difficult co-parenting conversation.
Right. It's about shifting the focus from what's going wrong to what's going right, even if it seems insignificant.
Exactly. And the source has this heartwarming idea of creating a recognition board where family members can highlight their achievements, big or small. It's a visual reminder of all the good things that are happening, even during a challenging time.
I love that idea. It's a great way to boost morale and remind everyone that they're capable, they're resilient, and they're moving forward.
That's such a powerful message to end on, especially for families navigating the complexities of divorce.
It is a powerful message. But we've only just begun this deep dive. There's still so much to explore in terms of emotional recovery and building a new future.
Absolutely. We've laid the groundwork. But now it's time to delve deeper into the specific strategies and insights that can help you navigate this next chapter with confidence and resilience.
We're ready when you are. Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive into the emotional landscape of divorce.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the emotional side of divorce. You did a great job laying out the groundwork, highlighting the challenges and emphasizing, those crucial first steps towards recovery.
And now, it's time to kind of delve a little deeper into the source material, explore some of the more nuanced strategies and insights that can really help you navigate this next chapter.
One thing that really stood out to me was the source's discussion on the psychological impact of divorce on children. They go beyond, those surface level observations and really delve into some fascinating concepts from developmental psychology.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think it's easy to get so caught up in our own emotional turmoil during a divorce that we forget that our kids are going through their own complex process.
Absolutely. The source talks about how divorce can disrupt a child's sense of security and attachment, which are fundamental to their emotional well-being. They even mention attachment theory, which suggests that early childhood experiences shape our ability to form healthy relationships later in life.
So if a child's sense of security is shaken during a divorce, could that have long-term consequences for their relationships as adults?
That's what attachment theory suggests. Of course, every child is different, and there are many factors at play. But the source really emphasizes the importance of providing children with a sense of stability and continuity,
Yeah.
even as the family structure is changing.
It's about reassuring them that they are loved and supported no matter what. And that makes me think back to our conversation about communication. The source really stressed the importance of co-parenting effectively, even when it's difficult.
And they highlight how ongoing parental conflict can be incredibly damaging to children. It creates, a sense of anxiety and instability that can really impact their emotional development. I was particularly struck by their discussion of what they call the spillover effect.
The spillover effect, what's that?
It's this idea that even if you're trying to shield your children from the conflict, they can still pick up on the tension and negativity. It's like this emotional residue that lingers in the air, affecting everyone in the household.
Wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. So even if we're not arguing directly in front of our kids, they can still sense that something's off?
Exactly. And that's why the source emphasizes the importance of managing your own stress and emotions. Because when you're feeling overwhelmed and reactive, it's more likely to spill over into your interactions with your kids.
Which brings us back to the importance of self-care. You mentioned earlier that the source had some interesting insights on mental resilience. What exactly is mental resilience, and how can we build it?
So think of mental resilience as that inner strength that allows you to bounce back from setbacks, to adapt to change, and to cope with challenges without falling apart. And the good news is, it's a skill that can be developed.
Okay, that's reassuring. So where do we start? Give us the source's top tips for boosting mental resilience during and after divorce.
It all starts with self-awareness. The source encourages you to pay attention to your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Notice what triggers stress for you, what helps you feel grounded, what coping mechanisms you tend to rely on, both healthy and unhealthy.
It's like taking inventory of your emotional toolkit.
Exactly. Once you have a better understanding of your own emotional landscape, you can start to make intentional choices that support your well-being. And the source highlights several key areas to focus on.
Let's hear them.
First and foremost, prioritize your physical health. We talked earlier about the importance of sleep, exercise, and nutrition. These are the foundational pillars of mental resilience.
Because when you're physically depleted, it's harder to cope with emotional stress.
Right. And the source also emphasizes the importance of nurturing your social connections. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, who offer support and encouragement. Don't be afraid to reach out for help when you need it.
I think that's something a lot of people struggle with, especially during a divorce. There's this sense of shame or isolation that can prevent us from asking for help.
And the source addresses that directly. They remind us that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of strength and self-awareness. It shows that you're committed to taking care of yourself so you can be there for your children.
And it also models healthy coping mechanisms for your kids, right?
Exactly. And speaking of coping mechanisms, the source dives into a variety of strategies for managing stress. They talk about everything from mindfulness and meditation to spending time in nature and pursuing creative hobbies.
It's about finding what works for you and incorporating it into your daily routine.
And they make a great point about the importance of having a toolbox of coping mechanisms, because different situations call for different tools. Sometimes you need to calm your nervous system with deep breathing. Other times you need to release pent-up energy through exercise or creative expression.
It's about being flexible and adaptable.
And the source really emphasizes the importance of practicing self-compassion. Divorce is a challenging process, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have bad days. Be kind to yourself.
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in self-blame and criticism during a divorce, but the source reminds us that we're all human and we're all doing the best we can.
Exactly. And that self-compassion extends to our children and even to our ex-partners. It's about recognizing that everyone involved is going through their own process, and it's not always going to be pretty.
It's about choosing empathy over judgment. And speaking of choosing, the source talks about the power of positive perception.
Yes. They talk about how a positive outlook can actually help you heal and move forward. It's not about pretending everything is perfect, but about choosing to focus on the good and the potential for growth.
So how do we cultivate this positive perception? What are some concrete strategies the source suggests?
Well, they talk about the importance of celebrating small wins, practicing gratitude, and reframing challenges as opportunities for growth. It's about shifting your perspective from what's going wrong to what's going right,
Yeah.
even if it seems insignificant.
It's about those mindset shifts that can make a big difference.
And the source even suggests creating a recognition board where you and your children can write down or draw pictures of things you're grateful for, accomplishments you're proud of, and moments that brought you joy.
I love that. It's a visual reminder of all the good things that are happening, even during a tough time.
And speaking of tough times, let's not forget about the inevitable stress that comes with divorce. The source has some interesting insights on how to manage stress effectively.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, stress can be debilitating.
The source emphasizes the importance of not bottling up your emotions. Find healthy outlets for expressing your feelings, whether it's through journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking professional help.
It's like that old saying, let it out or it will eat you up inside.
Exactly. And they also talk about the power of deep breathing and relaxation techniques. They even suggest exploring mindfulness practices like meditation or yoga, which can help calm your nervous system and bring a sense of peace.
I've heard so much about mindfulness, but I've never really tried it. What's the basic idea?
It's about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about noticing your thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by them.
That sounds really challenging, especially when you're in the middle of a divorce. How do you even begin to practice mindfulness?
The source suggests starting small, maybe with just a few minutes each day. Focus on your breath, notice the sensations in your body, and observe your thoughts without engaging with them. There are also lots of great apps and guided meditations available that can help you get started.
You know, I'm starting to see a theme here. It's not about grand gestures or drastic changes. It's about those small, consistent actions that add up over time.
Absolutely. And the source reminds us that divorce is a process, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, there'll be setbacks. But with each challenge, there's an opportunity for growth and resilience.
Speaking of growth and resilience, the source has some really encouraging words about celebrating victories, no matter how small.
Yes. They talk about the importance of acknowledging even the smallest wins, like a child getting a good grade on a test, or a parent successfully navigating a difficult co-parenting conversation.
Right. It's about shifting the focus from what's going wrong to what's going right, even if it seems insignificant.
Exactly. And the source has this heartwarming idea of creating a recognition board where family members can highlight their achievements, big or small. It's a visual reminder of all the good things that are happening, even during a challenging time.
I love that idea. It's a great way to boost morale and remind everyone that they're capable, they're resilient, and they're moving forward.
And that's such a powerful message to carry with you as you navigate the next chapter of your life. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. And it's important to remember that everyone's experience with divorce is unique.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to healing and recovery.
The source is a great resource.
Yeah.
But it's not a prescription. It's a toolbox. Take what resonates with you, adapt it to your own situation, and experiment until you find what works best for you and your children.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's support available. There's hope for the future. And you can emerge from this experience stronger and more resilient than ever before.
It's a chance to redefine what family means and to create a new chapter filled with possibilities. Now let's move on to part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll explore some final thoughts and takeaways from the source material.
Welcome back. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, exploring the emotional side of divorce, the importance of communication and support, and practical strategies for building resilience and navigating co-parenting.
It's been quite a journey, and as we wrap up our exploration of the source material, I want to highlight a few key takeaways that really resonated with me.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are your top insights?
First and foremost, I was really struck by the source's emphasis on the power of perception. They drive home the point that divorce doesn't have to define you or your future. It could be a catalyst for growth, a chance to redefine what family means, and an opportunity to create a new chapter filled with possibilities.
It's about choosing to see the experience as a transformation, not a tragedy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that leads to the second takeaway that really resonated with me, the importance of self-compassion. Divorce is hard, and you're going to make mistakes along the way. There will be moments of anger, sadness, regret, even relief. The key is to allow yourself to feel those emotions without judgment,
It's about recognizing that you're human. You're doing the best you can.
and that self-compassion extends to your children and even to your ex-partner. Everyone involved is navigating this terrain in their own way. And it's not always going to be pretty, but by choosing empathy over judgment, you create a space for healing and growth for everyone.
I love that. It's about recognizing the shared humanity in the experience. And speaking of shared experiences, the source also talks about the importance of reconnecting with your children after divorce, creating those special moments that strengthen your bond and build new memories.
Absolutely. And they emphasize that it's not just about being physically present, but about being truly present, engaged, attentive.
Quality time over quantity.
And they offer some great suggestions for creating those moments of connection. Shared meals, family game nights, outdoor adventures, even just cuddling up on the couch and reading together.
It's about finding those little rituals that bring you joy and help you reconnect.
On a deeper level.
And I think that's a beautiful message to end on. Divorce can be a difficult and painful experience, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. With the right tools and support, you can navigate this chapter with grace and resilience and emerge from it stronger and more connected than ever before.
Well said. And remember, even amidst the challenges, there is always room for joy, for connection, and for creating a new kind of happiness.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the emotional side of divorce. We hope you found it valuable, and we encourage you to continue exploring these concepts and find what works best for you and your family.
Take care, and best of luck on your journey.